Hey guys, welcome to our Radiant mini series. As Britt and I are just going to kind of walk through some different aspects of Radiant, we would love to introduce those who are not sure what this event and ministry is all about. And then we would like to just kind of talk through our event and just give you some different insight into our hearts around this and our desire just to bring faith and wellness together.
Yeah, so we wanted to chat a little bit about, like Emily said, what is Radiant, or what was Radiant last year, and
Yeah.
kind of our vision for it going forward, because this will be our second event, and then how it is different from other wellness events. This is what we call a faith and wellness event, but wellness is um, thrown around and
Yeah.
used a lot of ways, and so it can mean a lot of different things. So we want to talk about what it does mean to us, and then just how this started, how it came about, and who we are. So, do you want to tell a
Yeah.
little bit about who you are
Yes.
and how we got connected?
Perfect. Yeah. So I started off as a nutritional therapy practitioner and worked inside of a chiropractor functional office, and then eventually started my own online business working with people in the holistic space of being able to bring kind of get to the root cause of their health issues and then bring wholeness and wellness to their life from a holistic perspective, right? Supplements, diet, lifestyle, understanding the spiritual and faith side of that, and pretty active on social media, which is actually where I met Brittany.
Yeah.
Even though we live down the street from each other, the Lord connected us via social media.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I own my own physical therapy and wellness business, and I just started about a year ago. And when I started, I was looking for other like-minded providers that I could connect with and just build a little bit of community with. And so, similarly, I want to treat in a little bit more of a holistic way. Physical therapy in general tends to be a little bit more holistic in general because we're talking about body movement, and but within my practice I bring in a lot of other aspects of healing, and how we can't heal the body physically. We might
Mhm.
not be able to heal your pain if we don't address some of these other areas. And so I saw Emily's profile and I was like, oh my goodness, how have I not even heard of her before? And then I saw she was like, I was just impressed by everything I saw about her in general. And then I saw she was, yeah, down the road from, well, in the same town.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then,
I could walk to your house,
yeah,
so I feel like that's close enough.
I know, but I didn't even know you were like in the same town. I'm like, oh my goodness, she's right here in my own backyard. So then
Yeah.
we talked on the
Yeah.
phone and then had coffee. And then we realized like we each had this little desire
Mhm.
in our hearts, for some type of event like wellness or
Yeah.
like Radiant.
Yeah.
And, so yeah, we kind of started talking about that, and like
Yeah.
we would love to talk about all of the different aspects of
Yeah.
wellness and just bring in our own expertise and knowledge, and just to kind of get a more well-rounded view. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Which was cool because I think probably back in 2017, when I started really getting into wellness for my own health, recognizing there was such a lack, I found in bridging the gap between what does
Hmm.
it look like to steward your body and walk in a health perspective, food and environment and supplementation and all these different aspects. What does it look like to do that while also honoring the Bible? And I found there was just such a lack of overlay. And I was often kind of met with some conflicting, for lack of better words, maybe theology around what
Hmm.
I was understanding about the body and what the church did and how the church operated and what I was seeing health wise. So even then, I feel like the Lord started like turning my wheels of like, what does that look like? And I feel like I'd been gathering all these kind of pieces for a long time. And then Britt comes along and all of them lined up in a way that only God could line them up
Yeah.
in a way that executed it really quickly. So when we did our event in January, we had actually only known each other, what,
I
September?
mean, September, I think, was when we sat down
Yeah.
for coffee. And yeah, I think even just now, as we're talking about this and I'm thinking about it, like it's interesting how I had just started my business in like June of last year. And so this wasn't even on my radar until like probably July, as far as, oh, it'd
Yeah.
be cool to do something, yes, where we bridge all these aspects and bring in the faith and the spiritual aspects
Hmm.
like you're talking about. And so it was a very new, fresh idea for me. And but for Em, it had been something that
Yeah.
she'd been thinking about for a while. And I think that both of those were needed.
Yeah.
I think that both, it was helpful to have somebody who had thought about this a lot and kind of had put in a lot of prayer, a lot more prayer about it than I had specifically, because I didn't even have that thought. And then bridged with maybe like a fresh new, like, okay, I'm ready to get going type of deal. So
Yeah,
I think that's really
absolutely.
interesting to see how like the Lord brought us together, because our paths could have crossed many times before.
Even in
Like
high school, we're like, how did we not
we have
know each other?
so many connections,
Yeah.
but we didn't, and the Lord just like brought us together at the perfect
Perfect
time.
timing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think even Radiant, like while it was the idea of an event was new for you, it's not like the idea of faith and stewardship
Yes.
of our
Yeah.
bodies was new, right? And so
Exactly. Yeah.
those were years of, for both of us, having this deep foundation of wrestling with the Lord and our own health, our own understanding of the body, our own journey
Right.
with our kids and our family and our clients of like, how do I bridge the gap between all of this? And when I feel like you had years of practical
Mm-hmm.
application, which
Right.
also gave more vision
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
it.
Exactly. No, that's perfect. So, like you mentioned, we wanted to bridge the gap
Yeah.
between faith and wellness.
Mhm.
And so there were three main things that we wanted out of this event as we were talking and kind of getting our vision for it and writing it out. And one of those is that bridging the gap between faith and wellness, and how those two things cannot exist in silos. Many
Yeah.
times it does in this world,
Mhm.
but we don't feel that it should.
Yeah.
We as believers don't feel that it can, because those two things need to be infused with one another. And so that was one of our goals. Second goal was to bring community. And so we wanted this to be an event, an in-person event. We intentionally designed the setup at Radiant around creating small groups of women
Mhm.
to get to know one another. So how we had the tables laid out,
Yeah.
we had tables rather than rows.
Mhm.
We had time specifically structured in there for women to talk with those at their tables and to get connected with one another. And then even lunch, like lunch, we provided
Yeah.
lunch rather than saying, okay, everybody go do lunch on your own. We had lunch there
Mhm.
again to provide community, because what better way to
Yeah.
like talk and get to know other women than breaking bread with them.
Yeah.
And then, third, and most importantly, we wanted to leave people looking to Jesus more. That's
Mhm.
always been the goal. And I think that's always been one of our guiding purposes throughout this. As we have ideas or different thoughts, we always want everything to come back to that,
Yeah.
because otherwise this would be for nothing, for naught. So, and that was one of the reasons too, I think. Well, actually, I'm gonna say that was one of the reasons why we chose the name Radiant,
Yeah.
or in kind of our the guiding verse. But I think we actually had the name first, right? I think we had the
Yes.
name first, and it's
Yeah.
really interesting how after
And I
we
think it
came
was
up with
like
the
a
name,
chat GGP type of like
yeah,
list of
it was
like
a list. It was a list
all
from
these lists.
ChatGPT. Like,
Yeah.
what are some event names for it? But it has been incredible to see how God was in those
Yeah.
details through
For
ChatGPT.
sure.
There have been just so many little nuggets along the way, and so many things, as we always talk about, that just we are not even aware of, that
Yeah.
the Lord has been. And so we see that, and I just think of the radiance of the Lord shining through us, or us turning to
Mhm.
look to Jesus, as we said, like that third reason, and most important, like looking to Jesus. And I just picture his face like shining radiantly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that whole verse, right, is he delivers those who wait on him, who look to him. He delivers them from their fears that they may shine radiantly,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think that was again to kind of bridge all those 3 points that you had. You know, we see clinically what we've experienced is the fear around our bodies not working and not being able to trust our bodies. And so from the very practical sense of health, how can we deliver? How can the Lord deliver his people from
Mm-hmm.
fear? And a huge piece of that is knowing how to steward your body well so that you don't have to be afraid. You have tools in your tool belt. And then community. I see One of my favorite examples in my own life was when I was working with a practitioner in California, and we were looking at body temperature and blood sugar, and right, we were tracking all these different parts of my health throughout the day, figuring out food and timing and where we could find balance. And it was after I had spent a long day with my sister. We had gone for a walk with our kids and coffee and all these things. And that was the first time I started seeing balance.
Mm.
And then I went like a long, period of time, which I find, right, most chronic illness clients that I work with, especially when they're mamas of young kids, go long periods of time without community. And
Mhm.
then my numbers started shifting back in the negative. Right? My diet hadn't changed. Nothing I was doing had changed. Really, the piece was I wasn't connecting with other people. And I find so often, right,
Yeah.
that is just such a healing piece. Again, how much easier when we're terrified of something and we're fearful of something, and the Lord brings a voice of a sister in to speak truth back into that situation. It delivers us once again from the fear that
Yeah.
we have, and then that final piece, obviously, when our eyes are set on Jesus, right? When the fear of God is bigger than the fear of anything else in this life, like there is complete deliverance of fear. And when you walk in all of those areas, right, then there is this radiance that shines
Yeah.
out. And we wanted in person. We actually had a lot of people ask if we would do online.
Hmm.
And we felt it was so important to be in person because there is still an aspect of community that we miss because a lot of us are afraid, right? A
Hmm.
lot of women can be a little bit nervous to
Yeah.
like get in a room with other women,
Yeah.
especially we had several people actually fly in, drive in, come to the event that are not
Yeah.
from our area. And so even more terrifying to walk into a
Right.
room.
Didn't know anybody there except
Yeah.
maybe you or I. But yeah,
Yeah.
I want to say we had people from 5 different states
Yeah.
total, something like that. And it was really sweet to see how there was definitely a blend of people who were coming by themselves
Mhm.
who may have known us, but there was a few names, some names on the list that,
Neither
we
of
didn't
us
we
knew.
didn't know.
Yeah.
Um, so coming by themselves, and then some people came with one other, some people came
Mhm.
with maybe a small group,
Yeah.
and then we went back and forth about,
Yeah.
okay, do we do seating? Like, do we
Mhm.
say this is where you sit? But we just trusted the Lord in that and that
Yeah.
He would bring together who He did. And it's been so sweet to hear some of the stories about the connection
Yeah.
that happened and like
Yes.
friendships that were formed and
That
just
are
how,
still happening, right? That
yeah,
are still ongoing.
yeah.
Hmm.
And just the learning from one another. And those have been some of my favorite stories to hear how people
Yeah,
have been connected that way.
absolutely. Yeah. And some of those dark moments where they're like, oh, I have a new friend now. I can
Yeah.
text, even if I don't know them in person. And then obviously, we've seen the beauty of those who are local. We've seen some of those deeper connections with
Hmm.
each other just locally, which has been really cool.
Yeah. So we talked about how obviously this is a little bit different than other wellness events
Yeah.
just by bringing in the faith aspect of it.
Hmm.
But there are other ways I feel like it was different than other events as well. And so, do you have I don't want to say favorite way, but what are some
Yeah.
of the ways that really spoke to you as being, okay, this is set apart from other wellness events in
Hmm.
this way? Do you have one that kind of sticks out to you?
Oh, man. Um, the thing that stands out to me that is both like the first thought that comes to mind when you share that, but also maybe the piece that felt a little bit rushed was the balance that we tried to incorporate of here is information, here is conversation,
Hmm.
and then here's space to just be with the Lord and process that, and even then, even when we intentionally planned that time,
Hmm.
we would love to offer more time
Yeah.
because I just think that is so important. I think at a lot of wellness events I've been to, it is just overwhelmingly information
Yeah.
based. Um, and then there's aspects of like at Christian ministry, retreat type things, it's
Hmm.
a lot of like Bible and knowledge. And again, not that that's a bad thing, but I think we were able to create space. And that is a passion of ours is God is always speaking.
Right.
Are we giving him space to hear? And so wanting to kind of to make sure there was this corporate some smaller individual
Yeah.
groups, and then truly personal one-on-one time.
Yeah. No, that's perfect. And I guess that you mentioning that leads me to want to talk about the general, excuse me, flow of the event.
Yeah.
So for those that weren't there,
Yeah.
so we did have a mix of we had some worship. So we had amazing worship leader,
Yeah.
Emily Kay. And so we had some worship and then we kind of went back and forth throughout the day. So it was from 8:30
Mhm.
to 4 and we went back and forth throughout the day, little talks. The morning was a little bit more faith heavy, I would
Yeah.
say. And then the afternoon had some more like wellness and some more practical tips. We made sure to leave people with practical tips as well. And then we had some worship right after lunch as well. We had another speaker too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you want to talk about Amy a little bit? So Amy was our other speaker who was amazing and just also provided kind of a third
Hmm.
lens, a third angle. So, but Emily was
Yeah.
the one who kind of introduced me to Amy.
Yeah. So Amy, her background is in nursing, but truly her heart is around nervous system and understanding the nervous system and how it affects our whole entire body and how wellness gets to you cannot really heal the body if you don't
Hmm.
feel safe
Yeah.
and being able to understand. And she has spent hours with the Lord, probably more than hours, right? Days, months, for her own personal, like we all know that the Lord doesn't seem to, it's like those he wants to teach on certain subjects, he will ask them to walk through
Yeah.
what that looks like. And Amy's life has been that, and understanding from a very personal level what it looks like to have your nervous system imbalanced and dysregulated, and what are some of those practical tools. So, where I brought in more of the nutrition, Britt brought in more of just the physical side of things, and then Amy was able to come in and say, okay, but let's also deal with the nervous system. And so we had some of those listening exercises where she
Hmm.
walked us through the questions that she would walk her clients through, and what that looks like. So those were some of those spaces of being able to like sit and just be with Jesus. We
Yeah.
had phenomenal volunteers that were
Hmm.
also super quick to jump in and communicate with people and pray for people. And so it was, and I think every single one of our volunteers is also pretty heavily involved in the health space. So they had the desire to also learn and be there, which was cool,
Yeah.
and serve in that capacity. Not, like
Yeah.
we're here to volunteer, but we actually don't care what you eat.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah. So it was just a really good, with Amy there, a really
yeah,
good blend and mix of all
hmm,
these different lenses and aspects. And that's
yeah,
one of the things that Emily and I had a hard time with as we were trying to parse out our talks and what we wanted to talk
yeah,
about, because it's when you have so many options,
yeah,
then it can be really hard to say, okay, here's what I want to nail down. And
yeah.
we did, both of us continued to take stuff out of our talks
Yes. Even to the
to,
day of, I think
oh,
we're like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah.
this might be too much or too little or not enough. Yeah.
Yeah, and we continue to pull things out partly to, like we talked about, create more space for people to spend with
Yeah.
the Lord. But to also, we wanted to give a good mix of like, here
Yeah.
are some practical things and here are things that have worked for us and worked for our clients in other spaces.
Hmm.
But we know that more information is not better. We can
Yeah.
teach and guide and give these things, but the Lord can reveal things to you that we cannot.
Yeah.
Um, so those are some things that I feel like we want to continue going forward as we move
Yeah.
into the next event.
Yeah. And just the Lord is so kind in the way that we didn't really know, even Amy, we didn't really know what everybody was talking about.
Yeah.
And the way that we all just kind of had similar scriptures, we all talked about similar things, right? Because to kind of go back to your original question you asked a little bit ago, is like, how is it different? And I think that we have both, all three, Amy included, and our volunteers. I feel like we have years of going to both the wellness events,
Mm-hmm.
kind of the health
Mm-hmm.
space events. And then we've also had years of going and being involved in church. So we were able to say, like, I love this aspect
Yeah.
and I love this aspect. And so bridging that and then truly just being able to really partner with the Lord so that, I mean, only He could have
Hmm.
taken our talks
And just like
and
wove these
meshed them.
threads through.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was really sweet to see. We kind of had a general idea, but again, when it got into specifics, and we both kept changing, even if we sent each other our talks, they kept
Yeah.
changing because as the Lord continued to reveal more things, different
Yeah.
things, and really refine us and refine our talks ahead of time,
Yeah.
they continued to meld
Yeah.
and
And I think
change.
our people, like I just so believe that the Lord like knows the intention of and the need of each person coming to the event.
Yeah.
And so I have often wondered when our talks changed. We totally sold out and then we opened a few more seats and sold out again.
Hmm.
And then we had people really up until like the day of,
The morning
right,
of,
not
yeah.
able to come, but then immediately going to a wait list or giving their ticket to somebody else. And so I even wonder, like, as
Yeah.
our talks changed, was that in part because other people were saying yes to it and coming and the Lord was like, all right, this person needs to hear that. So I want
Yeah.
that tweaked a little
Yeah.
bit.
No, that's awesome. I love to think about that and just again, like it was very clear he was present
Yeah.
in all the details
Yeah.
and kind of weaving all of those things together. So how are there any other ways that you feel like you want to highlight? I'm trying to think if there's any other ways that we feel like this is different. I mean,
Yeah.
there were some other, I guess, little things that I'm
Yeah.
thinking of, just things that we really wanted to be
Intentional.
intentional. We wanted everybody to know how thankful we were that they were there, how
Yeah.
they were supposed to be there. They were in the right place. The
Yeah.
Lord led them to the right place. And so we did some things to like we created little gift bags for
Yeah.
everybody. Bracelets. Do you have your bracelet? I have my
Oh,
bracelet
I
on, but
didn't put it on today. I normally
one of our
do.
volunteers made these really cute bracelets
Yes.
that say Radiant. And then just full of little gifts,
Yeah.
full of little olive trees that we gave to everybody
Hmm.
and other little things. And then we also had some sponsors, and we wanted to make sure that was another way that I feel like we wanted to bring in community
Yeah.
because we had some sponsors,
Hmm.
and that way others at the event knew that here are some businesses that are like-minded,
Hmm.
that are faith-based that you can also support. So
Yeah.
while they are supporting this event, we can
Hmm.
also go and support them. And you know that you are supporting their business, you are
Yeah.
supporting their families. And so I thought that was really sweet to be able to
Yeah.
to do that as well.
Yeah. Because I think there is a kingdom principle in where we put our money.
Hmm.
And so, where we put our money, whether it's to church or to a paraministry or to even, in take the faith out of it, and even just we know in the wellness space, you vote with your dollars.
Yeah.
And so, where you put your money, I think there is an investment in that.
Hmm.
And so, where these sponsors, not only were we able to point them back, but like we were so honored and blessed
Yeah.
that these sponsors invested into what God is doing
Yeah.
through
Yeah.
this
It was a
ministry.
blessing for us to have them as a sponsor, but then also to be able to bless them with
Hmm.
getting their name out there, but also
Yeah.
hopefully getting some also kind of return on that as well. And for people to get to know them. I mean, many of the sponsors were
Yeah.
women that were there at the event. And so for people to get to know them on a personal
Yeah.
level
Yeah.
rather than just a business owner, but like who is this person
Yeah.
actually? So I thought
Yeah.
that was really sweet to be able to do that.
Yeah. And I think that you and I, in a lot of ways, were surprised by who actually came to
Yeah.
the event, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of people I would have thought would have not even jumped at the opportunity, but just like that we had been in conversation with that I was like, oh, I'm sure they'll show up, right? And just I feel like the invitation was on the table and maybe Britt and I had a specific idea of what that would look like. And
Mhm.
then it was
It was different.
very different than what we had expected in the best way, right?
Yes.
Like just watching, like Britt said, the conversations, the people who sat at each other's tables intentionally,
Yeah.
was just really cool. And to what you were saying about, again, the difference is, um, not that we would, our goal is to truly let people know that they've have been seen and that
Hmm.
they are loved and that they are worthy of stewarding the body, right? There are some people I find don't necessarily want to pursue health because there is this lie in them that they don't deserve it or they're not worthy of it or
Hmm.
there's no purpose
Yeah.
for them to do that, right? And it's like, no, you've been made with intentionality and placed on this earth for such a time as this on purpose. Like there is
Yeah.
purpose to your hair color and your eye color and like God doesn't make mistakes like that.
Yeah.
And so to be able to be like, but you are seen, right? Britt and I hand wrote notes to everyone who
Yeah.
came
That's
just because
great.
we so wanted them to know you have been prayed over.
Hmm.
You are seen and loved, and we are so glad you're here. And then our food. I think that was another
Yeah.
huge, huge thing that we were
A lot of
so,
people, we had a lot of feedback
yes,
from that was some
people
people's
are
favorite
still
part.
telling me like, "Hey, can I get those recipes?" Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you want to talk about the food a little bit and
Sure. Well,
our
so some of our volunteers like graciously said that they would make everything homemade. And we had talked about how we did want to do food. And we had gone back and forth the idea, okay, well, maybe we'll have some type of catering business or we'll pick up something from somewhere, maybe do a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
yeah.
And we had some awesome volunteers, friends say, nope, we can do this. We can make it all. So they made everything. So when everybody came in the morning, there was little things to snack on. So scones, homemade scones, fruit, coffee, those types of drinks
Lots of
too.
King coffee. I think we went
Yeah.
through a lot of boxes of King coffee.
Yeah. Yeah. Coffee, tea. And then they made, yeah, the scones. Can't remember if there were muffins too, but,
Mhm.
and they were everything,
Was
pretty much
labeled. Yeah.
everything, yeah, was labeled. So gluten-free, dairy-free, nut-free,
Hmm.
to be able to accommodate any allergies or sensitivities. And again, it was just another way to allow
Yeah.
us to steward our bodies well and
Yes.
to live that out. And then lunch was, well, we had some snacks like carrots, hummus, some
Yeah.
veggies, and then four different types of soup. So they could come up and then choose what types of soup they wanted and could get a couple different kinds and sample
Hmm.
it. And so I think everybody loved those soups. So at the end, after the event was
Yeah.
over, we were able to send up a follow-up email with, or a document with, here were the recipes, here were some of the
Hmm.
other things that we talked about. So one thing that we haven't mentioned yet was
Yeah.
everybody also got a booklet when they were there that kind of had the flow for the day and had just some helpful things from each of our talks. I wouldn't
Hmm.
necessarily say an outline, but helpful
Some
information.
resources or yeah,
Yeah, and then we
different.
had some different prayers. So prayers that
Mhm.
the Lord had laid on our hearts to have in the book that people could reference and pray, whether it was then at the event
Yeah.
during their like quiet time
Hmm.
with the Lord, to be able to pray those prayers back to him, to have those prayers as a reference going
Hmm.
forward. And so we had that document and we had that, well, there was a book at the event. And then
Yeah.
at the end, we sent that out with even more information and with the recipes. So the
Yeah.
food was definitely a blessing. We are so, so thankful for our volunteers for doing that. But it was another great way that we could show like, this is how you can honor
Yeah.
the Lord in what you put in your body and how
Hmm.
you feed yourself. We
Yeah.
weren't going to be talking about how to best do that and then have a bunch of junk
Yeah,
to
for
eat.
sure. For
And
sure.
we knew, and we know there's many great catering companies and
Yeah.
we know that there's a way, but we knew every ingredient that went into
Yes.
into each recipe.
Yeah.
So that was such a blessing to be able
Yeah.
to
And the amount of
provide
people
that.
I feel like who have made those recipes
Yeah.
post um the event, I think I keep hearing, even the other day someone was like, "Hey, I don't know if I got those
Yeah.
recipes. Would you mind sending them again?" Just because again, we wanted to not only provide nourishment to their body and their soul, but we wanted to say like this is like a practical way to do
Yeah.
this. It is not impossible to eat this way and it can taste really delicious. And to just right, who doesn't love like we had little bowls so they could try all the different soups. I don't even know if we
Hmm.
had any soup left.
I don't think
It
so.
was
Yeah.
pretty much all gone, which
Yeah.
was great.
Yeah.
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 So that is a little bit about, what it has been like in the past,
Yeah.
what it was like last year.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things that we want to carry forward to this year.
Mhm.
And I think going into this, we thought we had a vision that it would be more than just a one-time deal. But
Yeah.
after the first one was over, I feel like now we can really sit in that and we've been able
Mhm.
to kind of plan it out a little bit.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to mention a little bit about what it will look like next year, at least as far as much as we
Yeah.
know. So it was in that we had it in January, which is why we mentioned soups and
Yeah.
because it was cold.
And we live in Illinois and
Yeah.
we weren't sure what the weather was going to be.
Yeah, yeah. And the so we had a lot of feedback that people really actually enjoyed having it in January. So it was
Yeah.
at the end of January.
Well, and don't you think part of that is as moms, like you just put so much effort first into Christmas and you're just a little bit tired and worn out, and January feels pretty slow for most people.
Yeah.
And so to be able to like pause, reset in January to go again, make new friends and just have a time
Mhm.
for mom.
Yeah. To be
Seems
filled
helpful.
in or to be poured into by
Yeah.
others and just like filled with
And we had lots of people
spirit.
that weren't moms.
Yeah.
Just not that
Yes.
you have to be a mom. I just
No.
it seemed like
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And so yeah, we actually did a poll on Instagram to see like what time of year worked
Yeah.
best. And January, February was the time that
Choice.
most people wanted. So
Yeah.
whether you want to come to Illinois if you don't live in Illinois or not, that is what
It is.
people
Yeah.
want. So
Yeah.
so next year we are going to do it the last weekend of January again.
Mhm.
And this time, instead of a 1 day event, we're going to do an evening and then a full day. So that will allow us to have a little bit. We just felt like we wanted more time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I honestly don't feel like we will bring a lot more information,
Yeah.
but to allow more time for the Lord to work, as we talked
Mhm.
about, and to worship and to just continue to learn from one another, but most of all,
Mhm.
to have the space and the time to say, Lord, what do you have for
Yeah.
me here? And I have heard a couple, actually like two different testimonies from people who were there saying going into the day, going into the event, they had something in mind like, okay, God, I
Mhm.
think you want me to learn this, or I think this is what we're going to be talking about or what I'm going to be working on. And the Lord's like, no, actually, we're going to do this over here.
Yes.
We're going to work on this. And it's something that they was not even on their radar, something that they had not even had in mind. So
Mm.
we want to leave room for more of that.
Yeah.
So anyway, we thank you so much for watching. And we will be doing a couple more of these. So stay tuned so you can learn a bit more about, we're going to dive into a little bit more about what we did talk about there, and then also be able to talk with others who were there as
Yeah.
well. So thank you so much.